You have
We're
a recipe.
talking about herbs.
Talking about herbs, and you have a recipe, and it calls for a few tablespoons of fresh herbs, but you have a whole bunch. So what do you do with the rest of it?
Yes, you're overwhelmed with herbs, so you don't want to waste them, of course.
And
but
that's the
don't
worst.
worry, Chef Bill Collins is going to tell us what we can do with those herbs. He's from chefbill.com. Now look at all of these herbs that are here. It's overwhelming. We can't possibly cook with all of them right now.
No, we can't. And that's part of the great thing about herbs is what do you do with them, especially when you've got a recipe that calls for just a little bit. Do you just throw them out? Well, that's kind of a little bit wasteful, and especially when you want them later on. So we'll be talking about what to do with them if you need just a bit.
And it's expensive, too. I don't know, you go to the supermarket, if you don't grow your own herbs or buy them at a farmer's market, you go to a supermarket, you get a pack, which is crazy expensive, and yeah, you only use a little bit, so what do you do with the rest of them?
Exactly. You can spend $250, $350 or more on those herbs, and so that's what we're going to be getting to is how you store them, how you freeze them, how you dry them, all these things. So not only do you not waste them, but also you don't waste the money as well.
And it's always nice to share them with friends as well. You can do that.
That's it, and exactly. and the great thing about these, you talk about sharing, because all of these herbs came from Ashley's mother's garden.
They did.
Yes, they did. They did. She's got a beautiful garden, but she's got an overabundance. So, hey, if you want any herbs, I'm volunteering my
the
mom's
street
herbs.
address. Yeah. Just stop
Come on
on
over.
by.
We'll all be there.
Shall we go down the line telling everybody what these are?
Sure. And we're going to start with some sage. And sage is often thought about as a fall or winter herb. You think of sage, when you taste sage, it makes you think of Thanksgiving.
It does.
And so that's one of them. Next to it is savory. And I always think of savory as an earthy flavor. And I don't know why, I just do. And so it adds this a deep flavor. I always put savory and bay leaf in the same category together. Don't ask me why, I just do.
I won't. Now, here is this, I believe, and the best way to tell is to give it a little rub in your fingers to smell. Is that right?
Yes, yep. Or even just take a taste, because oftentimes you go, oh, that's terrible. But you're not even just eating
That's a
herbs.
weed.
That's a weed. I mean,
So we have right here, that's oregano.
that's the oregano. And with the flowers on top. 99% of the time when you get oregano, you're buying the dried oregano. So seeing it fresh is often exactly. So just to start, that's just a third of all of them. And we have here, we've got some thyme. And so the great thing about even just thyme is just, it just comes right off, and your fingers just kind of slide it right off.
That one's easy.
It's such a good flavor, too.
It is.
So we'll cover the rest of the herbs throughout the show today. Now, let's talk about this nice piece of meat you have right here.
Yes, this is
beautiful.
It is London broil. And there is no part of the cow called the London or the broil.
Really?
And usually it's flank steak. And it's what we used to call the tougher or the cheaper cuts of meat. And so that's why you really want to marinate it.
But now, how is it different from flank steak? Because it is flank steak.
It is flank
the way
steak.
that it's cooked or cut?
They just they give it the name. It was just a name that stuck around forever and ever. So a lot of, but also, well, in this case, though, it's a top round, because London broil can cover a whole bunch of different ones, all the tougher cuts of meat. And so when you throw something on the grill or under the broiler, it's not cooking for that long. And the rule of thumb for the tougher cuts of meat is you want to cook them for a long time. So here's what you want to do. You marinate it to help tenderize a little bit, and by cooking it till about medium rare-ish and slice it thinly, it's not as tough as if you were having just a regular steak. So that's why you want to marinate it. And the marinade that I've got here, it's one of my favorite marinades, but I've thrown in some of your mom's fresh herbs here. So it's got some olive oil, red wine, tamari, or soy sauce in there, lots of garlic. But in this case, I threw in some sage, I threw in some savory, I threw in some rosemary, all kinds of things to help it with the flavor. And so there are a couple of things that are going to happen next. First off is I'm going to dry off, take off all the liquid, from this, for grilling.
Now, why is that?
Because if it starts out all moist, starts out wet, it doesn't get its immediate crust, as it were, from cooking, from when the heat hits it. The searing is what I'm trying to say.
So if there's someone out there, no need to name names, but if there's someone out there who then takes all this marinade and drizzles it on the steak right when they put it on, that's probably the worst thing to do, right?
Well, you want to give it a bit of a head start, but here's what I do differently. I don't put the marinade on the steak. There's already some flavor that's gone in there. I'm going to take this leftover marinade. A lot of people just throw it out because they say, I can't eat that because it's got all this raw meat in it. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in the saucepan. We're going to make a nice sauce out of it.
That's brilliant.
Because when you boil it, that'll keep it from having the bacteria. That'll kill all the bacteria.
Exactly, because all you have to do is really just simmer it, boil it for 2 minutes. And that really, what you're doing, you had all the raw stuff in there, it's now cooked.
I think a lot of people at home, they get a thing of Italian dressing and they dump that in, maybe throw some extra herbs and spices. Can you boil that down too?
Absolutely. Now, here's the thing. When you, what I tell everybody is boil it down because, but taste it. Don't just throw it on the meat afterwards. Give it a nice taste because you might say, oh, that's too harsh, or there's too many herbs. That way you can start adjusting it. It needs some sweetness. You put in a little honey, put a little wine, put a little chicken stock, and then you have because you got the foundation of a great sauce here with the great herbs.
And it always kills me to throw it in the trash.
Exactly.
So it is a great way to have a delicious sauce.
Exactly, especially if the meat is going to be a bit tougher, because it will be. The sauce just kind of brings it all together because you're going to have the elements, some of the same elements of the sauce, which are going to be infused in the top of the meat because it's been marinating.
Well, this looks delish.
Yeah, so you can either throw it on the grill, or if it's a rainy day, and those do happen, or sometimes winter occurs, do it under the broiler. And the broiler is the most underused part of the kitchen. So it's just like having your grill, but the heat's coming from the top.
Well, Chef Bill, we're out of time for now, so we'll let you get to that, and then later in the show, we're going to preserve extra herbs to make them last throughout the winter.
Absolutely.
Oh, I can't wait to use those herbs in the winter.
Yeah.
And we don't want to talk about winter yet because let's enjoy the sunshine while
I'm
it's here.
sorry I brought it up.
Don't be sorry. It's fine. Let's enjoy the sunshine while we have it, and let's.
We're back with personal chef Bill Collins. ChefBill.com is the website, all about herbs today. But now we're talking dry rubs. But even if you want, you can incorporate some of your fresh herbs into it.
Absolutely. Most people think of dry rubs as just, just dry ingredients. And also it's rubbed on top of the surface of the food. The difference between a marinade and a dry rub is the dry rub goes right on top. You can put it on anytime up to 24 hours up beforehand. Immediately before is fine before you cook it, but it doesn't get down into the below the surface of the food, so it gives you a nice crust and gives you a really nice different mouthfeel flavor before you delve into the rest of the food. And so in this case, I'm going to be doing a Cajun fish, a blackened fish, but you can do for grilling and for chicken, put it on meats. It doesn't just have to be to do a blackened thing. So usually it's dry ingredients, but in this case, I took some of the herbs from your mom and your dad's garden.
Yes, I was going to say. It's a full family affair with the gardening.
Yes, it is. Delicious herbs. So you incorporate those into the dry rub.
Yes, because what I've done here, I've made a dry rub of some paprika, and some, you can put a little brown sugar if you want. I didn't in this case for the Cajun seasoning. Paprika, salt, pepper, a little cayenne, and often a little garlic powder or onion salt or onion powder. And then instead of just dried herbs, I've got some fresh ones.
I think a lot of people, they buy the store-bought rubs, but sometimes the first ingredient on that is salt.
Exactly, and I've made this. I've had cooked for people who are a no salt added diet. So you do a nice dry rub, and whatever you have to accompany it, then you can put some different flavors in there as well. So it's not to say it's flavorless without the salt, but making your own is also cheaper. You can make a small amount, a large amount, whatever you need to do.
And you go a whole lot less salt.
And it's actually literally just as it's described. Rub it on.
And the gloves are always good because then you don't have to worry about
touching
so you get something right after.
You get called away real
Fish
quickly, and you don't have to worry about that. So just rub that on, and I've got a cast iron skillet here. I'm going to put in. You can see it's quite warm.
Oh,
and you really need just a little skim coat. You don't need that much oil because you're not frying it. You're really just hitting it into a very hot skillet. Exactly. So give it a moment to get a little more screaming hot.
Now you're using canola oil. You would not want to use olive oil because that would burn.
Exactly. Olive oil has a lower, we call a lower flash point, and that's exactly, you don't want to, because this is going to be really hot. And sometimes it's hotter, get more of a sizzle, but that's going to have a very nice sizzle anyway. So that's it, and the fish will cook, and you'll see the blackened part underneath. A lot of people also associate blackened fish with it's got to be super hot and spicy, it'll take the top of your head off. Not at all.
Don't need it.
Don't need it. It can be as spicy as you want. And in this case, I was talking about dry herbs before. In this case, for the dry rub, I minced up a few things. I put in some chives. I put in some rosemary. I put in some lavender. I put in some sage. I threw everything in because we've got them right here, and we're going to come up with a new, different flavor for this.
So, Chef Bill, we're going to check in with you at the end of the show. We're going to show off the finished fish dish. We've got the steak cooking in the broiler right now. We do. And the best part, we're going to show you how to freeze and store extra herbs that you have a little bit later, so don't go anywhere.
Can't wait to use my herbs at Thanksgiving. So excited for that. Still ahead. Welcome back to the Mass Appeal Kitchen. We are with Chef Bill Collins from ChefBill.com, and we're finishing up, well, I should say the fish, but this is never really finished.
It's never finished.
Talk about herbs and how you can use them.
We can do it all the time.
All right, now the next stage in this herb talk is making a fruit salsa, is that right?
Yes, it's called a rock fruit salsa. Because the reason they're called rock fruit, peaches, plums, nectarines, is because the pit inside is, well, a rock. And so that's why instead of little seeds, that's why when you hear something referred to as rock fruit, that's what that is.
I thought it grew near rocky areas.
It can do that
wrong.
too.
Okay.
Well, okay, you're wrong. So, so you've got the different. I've gotten here some peaches and some plums, and the great thing is that coming up in the next handful of weeks, we're going to have our local peaches. These are from New Jersey, which considered local if you're from Australia, but we're not. So geographically wise, so we've got the rock fruit in there. I've already put in some red onion. I put in some scallion. I've got a little balsamic I'm going to add, just a little bit. I like to add also just a little bit of olive oil. I'm going to put in some lime zest, a shake of hot sauce, okay too. But here's the thing where you can go wild. The recipe that's on the Mass Appeal website calls for cilantro. Some people don't love cilantro, and we don't have any cilantro here. But we've got so many other great flavors that we can add to this. So what would you like to see? Would you like to see some mint in your salsa? Would you like to see some chives? Would you like to see some parsley, some basil? You can go with anything you want.
What do you want? I know what I want. I had a runner-up, and now I know what I really want.
Well, I think mint would be great.
Okay, why don't you grab some
with
mint?
fruit.
All right.
Why don't you grab a couple
I
pieces?
also think this purple basil is
Yep.
really intriguing. I have no idea what it tastes like.
Yep.
Now, Chef Bill, I was thinking chives. Had we put chives in there, would it still be tasty?
It would be great because
right.
actually I forgot about the chives beforehand, so I already put some scallions in. However, throw some chives in too. They're very complementary.
Oh, yeah.
It's the same family, right? Onions,
Yes.
chives.
Exactly. So now it's going to go from rock fruit to mint salsa. So I'm going to take some of that. But here's what you can do. You can.
goes a long way.
A lot of times they say just tear the basil, but what you can do is something a cut called a chiffonade, and this will be on the quiz. You just roll up a few leaves like that, and you really just kind of cut like that along the sides,
Nice.
and you've got these really pretty little shreds. So it's going to taste the same, but again, it gives a nice little different look.
Does purple
is
basil
great.
taste the same as basil?
It's different. You can do a purple, it's tough to say, a purple basil pesto, but
I bet it would look terrible.
well, it would look kind of funky.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it does have a slightly different taste. So purple basil you can use. It's great for drinks. It's great going with fruit. You can do a basil, a pesto with it. You can also, there's some Thai basil here. That's more for Thai dishes if you've got some lemongrass or some coconut milk.
Oh.
So again,
this is great, though.
so now I'm doing a little chiffonade on the mint. You want to give me a couple chives also?
All right.
And
So
Both of
exciting.
ours.
this is great. So I'm just going to take 2 of these.
No, this is great. You know what it is? Because people go, I know, like my folks do it, my grandmother does it. You go to the store, you get all the herbs in the bag, and then you feel swindled at the end of the day because you don't use all of them. And
Exactly.
It's infuriating to throw it away.
Exactly.
You know, Chef Bill, I don't know if you know this. Americans throw away over $500 worth of food a year.
I believe that. It's
Crazy.
so easy to forget what's in the back of your fridge. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
And so then, I just bumped into you there. So now,
Beautiful.
and so now you've got all these things in there. You can let it sit for an hour or so, or which would mean we could be coming in the middle of the news, or we can try it right now.
Well, you know, how about we let it sit for about 10 minutes because later in the show we're going
Nope.
to learn how to fry. Well, Ashley can eat it right now. But in the meantime, we learned about midsummer gardening last week. Take a look. Welcome back to the show, and we're back with personal chef Bill Collins. So we've been cooking and marinating and making drinks and making artwork all day long, but now we're talking about freezing and storing our herbs.
Yes, and the thing you want to remember is, just as we talked about strawberries back in strawberry season, is you just don't want to take a whole clump of them, throw them in the freezer, and hope for a good result when you go to use them. What you want to do is either separate all the leaves. Well, first of all, you want to clean them and rinse them off, because especially if you pick them just after a rainstorm, all the dirt will kind of come on up. So rinse them off, gently rinse them. You can either roll them in a towel or put them in a salad spinner and gently get all the excess water off of them after you rinse them.
But it's really important to dry them out.
It is. You dry them. Even if you let it sit out on the counter for a while, it's not like meat or dairy that you don't want it to sit out on the counter. It's fine to sit out on the counter. So then what you do is you can either take the whole leaves or even chop them up, slice them up, take the rosemary and pull it right off the
Stem
stalk.
it, I guess.
Yep, and put it on a sheet pan or on plates or even big piece of foil. Put it in the freezer. Freeze it individually like that. It won't take long to freeze. It could be an hour or so. You could even leave it for a day or two. There's no big deal. But then it'll be frozen. Then you can put it in a Ziploc bag and walk away. What people also sometimes do, especially if they're going to be using them, and when you thaw it out, it's not going to have the same crisp texture. You'll have great flavor. It's still going to be terrific, but it's not like right off the vine.
Okay.
So also another way of doing it is if you have some extra ice cube trays, is put a little water in, put in some of the chopped herbs, put a little, then freeze it, and then put a little water over that as well. And so then you can take that out when it's all frozen. You've got a little bag of herbed ice cubes. And so if you're going to make a soup later on during soup season, just toss in. You've got an ice cube, it'll melt immediately, and your herbs are right in there. So that's another way of saving them.
So easy.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't know if you know the answer to this. This is dill, and a lot of people use it in pickles and other recipes. What part of it do you use? Is it this part or is it this part?
It's this part. Actually, I'm just pulling around here. You see all these little hairy bits here? And those can come right off. You can have some of the stems. It's perfectly fine. And
delicious.
And delicious. You can use those for pickling. It goes great with fish. I put a dill in sauces, like I do something similar to a honey mustard sauce. I throw in fresh dill. So it's a strong flavor, but not strong like rosemary, so it's noticeable, so it can really help out with other dishes. Another thing you can do for storing your herbs is to dry them. Take a piece of string or even a twisty tie so you can keep tightening it, and take a little bundle of them and just hang it up. And it'll go longer if it's humid weather, but just air dry it. It'll dry right out, and then you take everything off the leaves, off the stems, and now just as though you're buying in the supermarket jar, you've got your dried herbs.
Now, roughly how long do you
great.
think that'll take?
The short answer is till it's done.
Okay.
But because your
We're doing
mileage
it upside down like this, right?
Sure, and just take a bunch of them in time together, because your mileage may vary. Because if you do it in the kitchen, which makes sense, kitchen's kind of a humid room because you have all kinds of things going on. I wouldn't recommend it to the bathroom for many reasons, including humidity. So
that's one way that you can dry them, and of course freezing them as well. Let's talk about what we have completed here: the marinated steak and the fish with the dry rub.
Yes, we like to call this surf and turf because I've got fresh herbs and everything. The rock fruit salsa had the herbs in it. The marinade had herbs in it. The fresh herbs, I put in some sage and rosemary. And also the fish itself, the dry rub, had a number of the herbs. So now they're all ready to go. I've got some cut up there. If you want to jump in and take a taste, all these would have done well with dried herbs, but the flavors do not jump out anywhere near. I mean, the salsa that you had earlier, I never put mint in my salsa, but it was right here, and I put it in, and as you saw,
it was delicious.
So surprise yourself in the kitchen, because you never know what you might find.
If you have the herbs, use them, right?
Exactly, and throw them in things you wouldn't ordinarily pair them with. For instance, you usually think of rosemary with lamb. Put it with some fish. Put it with some beef. You could even put it in a drink. Imagine what your lemonade would be like if you put some fresh basil in. A basil lemonade is actually a very popular drink. So you can either just put it in and let it soak in the flavors. You can put it in a food processor and have it all chop up. There's no end to the possibilities of what you can do with the fresh herbs.
And speaking of drinks, we made some delicious drinks earlier. You see some mint over there as well.
Those look great.
And with Alexandra Sheldon, we made the painterly collage, and she finished yours.
And she finished yours too. It looks amazing.
That was hers. Mine is still a work in progress.
Oh, yours is still in the shop.
It's still in the shop. But look at how beautiful.
Amazing. All of the instructions for all of these things you've seen today, mymassappeal.com. That's where you go for everything from this
so we
to
all
that.
grab a drink.
I think we should.
We're going to toast.
We're going to toast. And the best part, Bill, Chef Bill, 30th anniversary, you and your wife, right?
Today, absolutely.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you very much.
Happy anniversary. 30
Thank you.
years.
Thank you very much.
What a celebration. That's so wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.